All right, Shalom Israel. Before we begin, I'd like to say all praises to Yahweh by Hashem, Yahweh Shah by Hashem Ruach Kodash. Double honors to my elders at Great Millstone. Honor to all the brethren out here doing the work in the will of the Father in truth and sincerity, and this is your fellow servant Ariyah. And before I begin, if you are a so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American, once again, if you are a so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American, according to your father, once again, according to your father, you are a biblical Israelite. I don't care what skin color your vessel is holding. I don't care what language you are speaking. I don't care what lands you are dwelling in. If your father or your father is a so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American, you are a biblical Israelite. And when I speak unto you and I say Shalom. So, getting into another history piece, right? So if you happen to see my Hidden History Part 1 and my Hidden History Part 2, you will see that we was talking about movies like the Troy movie, right? And we also talked about, I brought up the movie Jason and the Argonauts, right? And I also talked about the movie 300. Now, all these movies in history can connect. So once again, when you're dealing with these events, they tell it to you as if it was a legend, as if it was mythology, as if it didn't really happen. But these events truly happen. Now, what makes them legend, what makes them myths, is how they will change certain names and turn the, or shall I not say change names, but they give a God complex to certain individuals, or they make certain individuals seem bigger than life, or they make the events that individuals had to go through seem like impossible feats, and they're fighting mythical animals and making it seem like ain't no way that is true. So this is how they wrote these stories. This is how these real events that actually happened became legend, became myth. So once again, if you go watch my Hidden History Part 1, Hidden History Part 2, you're going to understand when you watch movies like 300, you're going to understand that the original Spartans, the original 300, which are the Lacedaemonians, the Dorians, they were what? They were Israelites, meaning they were so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Yeah, they was indeed the true biblical Israelites. And then also when you watch the movie like Troy, you will understand that in this movie, what you would be watching in the real events that actually happened, all right, what you would be watching is you would be watching the Greeks, the original Greeks, which is Japhet of the scriptures of the Bible, which you will know today as the so-called Polynesians and Samoans. And they were fighting against the Trojans, or what you would know today as the so-called YT man, which he is known in the scriptures by his biblical name as Esau, Edom, Idumea. This is what you're watching in this movie. And then when it comes to Jason and the Argonauts, you are watching a Israelite civilization, an Israelite kingdom that the Israelites built within Greece, within the land of Japhet, which Greece is the land of Javan, a son of Japhet. So you are witnessing a kingdom that the Israelites had established within the land of Javan. Now, when you dealing with this movie, because this movie actually intertwines not only with the movie Troy, but also going into the movie 300. So when you're dealing with this movie, this pretty much is almost like a Lion King type of tale of events that actually happen. So once again, real life. This story is about, once again, an Israelite civilization that came about within the Greeks, within the land of Javan, which is Greece, that they established. And within this kingdom, there was a split. You had an uncle of Jason, which Jason is the main character in this movie, which his father was the king of the kingdom, but his uncle pretty much did a power grab to rule the kingdom and threw Jason's father, the rightful king, into prison, and then tried to kill Jason. But when he tried to kill Jason, his mother faked his death and then actually sent him to be raised in another kingdom. So almost pretty much like a Lion King type activity. You know what I'm saying? So basically, after years go by, Jason becomes a man and he returns back to his father's kingdom to be placed on the throne. So when he returns, his uncle promised him that, hey, I'll let you return to the throne if you complete certain missions for me, if you go out and complete certain missions. So, and then when you watch the movie, you'll see him go out and complete all these different missions to try to get his kingdom back, to try to be placed back on the throne. Now, when he goes out to do these missions, he has 50 warriors with him. Now, I'm gonna talk about two. Well, I'll talk about three. I'll talk about three warriors that was with him. You had Palis and Telamon, which were extreme. Hey, when you talk about kick-ass warriors, they was extreme with it, man. Not to be elf with. And Palis, which was the brother of Telamon, Palis is actually the father of Achilles. So when you watching the movie Troy, and you see Achilles fighting with the Greeks versus the Trojans, the reason for that is why? Because Palis is from this kingdom that was in north of Greece, which was Thessaly, which is of this kingdom of Jason. This is the kingdom that Palis raised Achilles in. And then also, friends of Jason, another guy that everybody knows of is Hercules. Okay? Which Hercules was known for his strength. And this is going to lead into a war later on that we're going to talk about. So let's get Hercules real quick, because a lot of people don't know Hercules, ancient Hercules, is black. All right? For they were Israelites. These were Israelites that was already in the kingdom, or shall I say in the land of Japhet. And once again, if you go back and watch my Hidden History 1 and 2, you're going to understand that not only did you have Jason and the Argonauts in their kingdom, or shall I say his father's kingdom, in Thessaly in North Greece, you also had the Helots, which were in Greece also. So let's get some images of ancient Hercules. See that, carrying the beard like he's supposed to, Israelite custom. See, Hercules, black man, you see? Dark images, all right? So-called black man, shall I say. All right, a man of color, brown skin, you see him? Yeah, this is Hercules, man. This is Hercules, wrestling a lion and all that, man. So, going into Hercules, let's talk about how the Dorians state that they are descendants of Hercules, and this is what's going to bring forth the Mycenaean Wars. Okay. Okay, so this is AI overview. The Dorians, particularly their ruling dynasties, claim descendants from Hercules, you see, through his children, the Herculidae. So let's go to the Mycenaean Wars. So check this out. Remember, we spoke about the Helots in history, in my hidden history part 1 and part 2, right? So it states, while the Helots were primarily agricultural workers, they did not participate in Spartan military campaigns, often in significant numbers. So once again, this is why the Helots were put in servitude up under the Spartans, up under the Lacedaemonians, up under the Dorians, for they are all the same people. This is why they was put in servitude, because they didn't want to fight with their people. Once again, got to remember, these Helots, they are also Dorians. They are also Lacedaemonians. They was pretty much comfortable Israelites within the land of Japhet, and was comfortable with their roles, and didn't want to cause no chaos, didn't want to cause no fight. They just wanted things to be as is. You see that? So let's get that. Let's show that they was actually Lacedaemonians. So going back to Antiochus, right? The historian. So let's see what he had to say. So it states, AI overview. Antiochus of Syracuse, a Greek historian writing in the late 5th century BC, proposed that the Helots were originally Lacedaemonians who did not participate in the Mycenaean Wars. Why didn't they not participate? Because they didn't want to cause no beef. You see? They didn't want to get involved. And since they didn't get involved, this is what happened. According to his account, these individuals were subsequently punished for their lack of participation by having their citizenship revoked and being reduced to slavery and named Helots. You see that? So they was actually Lacedaemonians who was in the land already, big time chilling, relaxed, didn't want to cause no beef. And since they didn't want to participate in the wars, once the war was over, once the Dorians won, they said, hey, since y'all didn't want to help us, we thought we was family. Y'all didn't want to help us, then damn it, we're going to put y'all ass in slavery. You see? That's what happened. Now, let's go see why these wars started. Getting out of that. Let's go. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so AI overview. The Mycenaean Wars were primarily driven by Spartan need for fertile land and agricultural resources. while Spartans as Dorians used the mythological return of the Heraclid to justify their conquest of the Peloponnese. The specific wars were motivated by get to the point, man. Here we go. Spartans considered themselves descendants of Hercules, viewing their conquest in the Peloponnese as rightful return, not a foreign invasion. Correct. So they was fighting over that land because they understood that Hercules was the rightful owner of that land. Once again, Hercules was a part of what? Was part of that kingdom of Thessaly in North Greece. But as we know, according to the stories, they were part of the Argonauts that would go out and complete certain missions. So when he was completing certain missions, I'm pretty sure they was establishing their own civilizations, their own communities in certain lands that they was overtaking. And one of those lands that they overtook was Messenia. And this is where you get the Messenian Wars. So this is why the Spartans or the Dorians went to fight for that, went to fight to take over that land. And let's show you where Messenia is. So this is Messenia. So as you can see, Messenia is really Sparta before it was known as Sparta. Because if you look at Sparta, so now let's type in Sparta. You're going to see that it's the same place. So without them doing this war, you wouldn't have no Sparta. You wouldn't have no 300. You see that? It's the same land. So this is the Spartans. This is 300. This is the Dorians. This is the Lacedaemonians. This is the Helots. This is Hercules' descendants. Hercules was part of the kingdom of Thessaly, which goes back to what? Which goes back to Jason and the Argonauts. Yeah, which goes back to Jason's and the Argonauts. And they will go out committing. They will go out conducting different missions for Jason to return to the throne. And then once again, also a part of the Argonauts, you had what? You had Peleus. Okay? This is who you had. Which once again was an Israelite. See them wearing the beards like they supposed to. You see? And he was the father of Achilles. So this is why Achilles was fighting with the Greeks. So this is how Jason and the Argonauts also match up with what? With Troy. Because Peleus' son, Achilles, fought with the Greeks versus Troy, versus the Trojans. Once again, which the original Greeks that Achilles was fighting with, which once again, the Achilles will be an Israelite, a so-called Negro, Latino, or Native American. And he will be fighting with the original Greeks, which will be what you know today as the so-called Polynesians and the Samoans. And they was fighting against the Trojans, what you know as the so-called YT man, which is Esau, Edom, Idumea. So that's how Jason and the Argonauts movie tie in with Troy. Because Achilles' father was Peleus of that kingdom, of the kingdom of Thessaly in North Greece, which is where Jason and the Argonauts was from. And then it goes from Troy to 300 because without the Dorians understanding that there were Israelites in that area, and it was Israelites that had conquered lands in that area, and that they descended from Hercules, and they wanted that land back that Hercules had conquered, and they started the Mysianian War. If they didn't do that, if they didn't know that, then that war would never happen, and they would have never established what you know as Sparta, and there would never been a such thing as the 300. You see? So, as I always state, the Israelites, man, we were scattered everywhere, man. And this is way back during the late Bronze Age, early Iron Age. Once again, this is during the time of King Solomon. As if you go back and watch, once again, my Hidden History, Part 1 and Part 2, I talk about these things. So the Israelites had already been scattered. So this is why when you go to Acts, right? Acts chapter 2, verse 5. All right, sorry about that. The screen went out, but we're back. So that's why when you come here to Acts chapter 2, verse 5, it states what? And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. So, hey, the Israelites had already been out and about amongst these other nations. And once again, this was way back, man. Even before we had been scattered throughout these different captivities, when you're talking about the Babylonian Empire, whether you're talking about the Assyrian captivity that the Northern Kingdom went into, whether you're talking about the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, all those, none of those empires were nowhere near in existence. You see? Continuing. Now, when this was noise abroad, the multitude came together and were confounded, because that every man heard them speak in his own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, Behold, are not all these which speak Galileans? And how hear we, every man in our own tongue, wherein we were born? So you had all these Jews coming from all these nations, speaking these different nations, speaking these different tongues, speaking these different languages of these nations. And look at all these different places they was coming from Parthians and Medes, Elamites, the dwellers in Mesopotamia, and Judea, and Cappadocia, and Pontus, and Asia, and Phrygia, and Pamphylia, in Egypt, and in the parts of Libya about Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians. We do hear them speak in our tongue the wonderful works of Yahweh. So you had Israelites scattered, as it said before, scattered throughout every nation under the heaven. And once again, this goes all the way back even to the time period of dealing with Jason and the Argonauts, with them having a kingdom in North Greece known as Thessaly, and having a whole kingdom, a whole nation of Israelites there. And then also going to deal with the Helots. Also dealing with the Helots, which were Israelites. That was there. All right, that was in Messenia and Laconia, big time chilling. Didn't want to fight because they was on easy street. Didn't want to cause no beef between what you know today as the Polynesians and the Samoans, which they are Japhet. And because they didn't want to fight, they got put into slavery for not wanting to fight for their family. Which the Spartans, the Lacedaemonians, the Dorians were their family. They were all Israelites. So real quick, and just want to talk about King Solomon, right? A little bit, man. Because King Solomon don't get a lot of get the respect that he supposed to get, because a lot of people, they always bring up Massa Musa, right? They always bring up Massa Musa, the Israelite over the Mali Empire. That was bring him up, right, as being like the richest or whatever. But not understanding, man, hey, King Solomon, man, he was that guy. Because King Solomon, once again, he knew about the new world. He knew about the Americas. And this is not no damn King Solomon, all right? For King Solomon was an Israelite, man, all right? A dark-skinned man, okay? This would be more like it, you know what I'm saying? Let's get the correct picture up there, man. So, yeah, King Solomon, hey, he was that guy. Because King Solomon knew about the new world, and he was sending his navy with Hiram over to the new world, and they would get gold. Once again, you got to watch that Hidden History Part 1 and Part 2, and they would get that gold and all these exotic animals from the new world, or what you know as the Americas, South, Central, and North America, what you know as the Americas today. And he was blowing those people